This is just an excerpt from a full episode. If you enjoyed what you hear here, go check out other full episodes, either on YouTube or as part of the podcast feed. Enjoy!
On to wage theft news! Provisions criminalising wage theft, changes to enterprise bargaining, award simplification, and extended long-term pay agreements for major projects were thrown out by the Morrison government. The proposed penalties were put forward by Christian Porter before his past came back to appropriately deal him some consequences. These reforms promised criminal penalties of up to 4 years in prison to crack down on serious wage theft, and new civil penalties of 2 or 3 times the amount of underpaid wages. So there would actually be appropriately dealt out fines for businesses who stole money. So that's a nice change. But it seems they couldn't face the irony of putting into law penalties for punishing past misdeeds that were proposed by Christian Porter. I mean, come on. The man is trying to avoid his past. The coalition did keep increased rights for casual workers to ask for permanent jobs and a definition of that work type from its original bill. Partly because they are the party of jobs at the moment and not the party of good jobs or jobs that don't steal from you or get punished when they steal from you. Just jobs. Provisions criminalising wage theft, changes to enterprise bargaining, award simplification, and extended long-term pay agreements for major projects were thrown out. Because if you try to make a Liberal Party member suffer for his past, then everybody will suffer. Get it? It all rested on former Nick Xenophon team, current Centre Alliance member, and man who gave an impassioned anti-anime speech attempting to ban the importing of anime in Australia and into your quiet housemate's heart, Sterling Griff. Griff held the deciding vote, but would back only the casuals and wage theft provisions. So the government took its bat and ball and screamed, "If you can't handle me at my detaining refugees on a prison island, then you don't deserve me at my helping the poor get money back from their shitty bosses," and gutted the package. Prime Minister Scott Morrison started playing his old classic, blaming the Labor Party for leading opposition to the bill despite his government failing to win crossbench support for the measures. No surprises there. Which is a pretty twisted version of them being voted down because they were considered pretty awful overall. Which I can't say is a huge surprise. The Liberal government doesn't actually know how to communicate with people who earn less than $180,000, as they've already expressed those people aren't even rich. The ACTU opposed the weakening of wage theft punishments in jurisdictions where it was already deemed a criminal act. And the Australian Workers' Union said it would only support the new offence if the Victorian and Queensland laws were expressly preserved. Whereas the Victorian Labor government said the bill's focus on the most serious offences was more limited than its current wage theft laws, which can carry up to 10 years jail and are set to come into effect in July. So you better watch out, restaurant industry. You've been put on notice. July is coming for you. JobKeeper is done. It's time to fix your books. And not in like the dodgy way, fix them so that they're correct, like the actual definition of fixing. Senator Griff said that he was gobsmacked with the government's decision to scrap wage theft penalties. Donning his best angry dad at the picnic voice, he said to Parliament, "Shame on you all for trashing such an important amendment." And even though I disagree with his anime shaming stance, on this we agree. Especially because wage theft penalties were supported by all 5 crossbench senators in a very rare consensus. They formed the very rare senatorial Voltron. Even One Nation supported the government's package after striking a deal for small changes to rules around converting to casual employment. Whereas independents Jackie Lambie and Rex Patrick had proposed dumping all of the bill except for the wage theft penalties. Look, I can't say that this entirely surprises me, as this is the Liberal government trying to make money from workplaces after the revelations that they will not be forcing any workplace to pay back excess JobKeeper that they may have acquired while making record profits from a pandemic. Who are these profiteering plunderers? Well, let's explore, shall we, in the horrible world of hypocrisy. Let's have a look here. Who have we got here? Here we go. The tax office has revealed $340 million in overpayments made to businesses on JobKeeper in another scandal around the $101.3 billion wage subsidy program this year. So about $150 million is missing. And while roughly $135 million has been clawed back already, the ATO ruled out chasing down the further $50 million or so because they said businesses had made genuine errors. As opposed to those genuine monsters on JobSeeker who will do whatever it takes to steal their dirty sitting at home and bumming around watching Netflix money. Bunch of filth they are, and have never, ever made a genuine mistake while dealing with a circular and deceptive bureaucracy of Centrelink, and it certainly isn't that the high turnover of undertrained staff will cause problems for these masterminds capable of inflicting Darren Brown levels of deception merely by speaking on the phone. Why does Darren Brown work so hard when he can just pick up the phone and talk to some people for a much more effective special? Darren Brown, the Great Welfare Heist. Really leaning into the magic today. Okay, who have we got? Let's have a look. Who have we got here? First up, Solomon Lewis. That's the Just Group, the company behind such brands as Peter Alexander, Smiggle, Just Jeans, Dottie, JJ's. Now, Premier Investments, who actually owns Solomon Lewis, has been under increasing pressure to repay their JobKeeper subsidies after the company reported a surge in profits over the pandemic. Presumably because people were both putting on those COVID kilos, and so they needed to buy new pants, and had nothing else to do, and so they got really heavily into arts and crafts. But only with like odd-shaped highlighters because we were desperate for any sort of novelty. So earlier this year, the company said that it expected its earnings before interest and tax to come at between $221 million and $233 million for the 27 weeks till January 30th, a 75 to 85% rise. Not to mention last year, outgoing chief executive Mark McKines received a $2.5 million bonus. Presumably that is for being the only person who has managed to make a Smiggle profitable. Sure, it took a pandemic, but that's just the kind of outside of the box thinking that nets you a $2.5 million bonus, baby! And this one's a bit of an odd one. Footwear retailer Accent Group, the $1.2 billion retailer which operates stores such as Platypus, Hype and Skechers, will not hand back any of its almost $50 million that it received in JobKeeper subsidies, despite reporting a $20 million jump in profits for the first half of the fiscal year 2021. Footwear? Where have you been going? Unless Accent Footwear is the official footwear of anti-lockdown protesters, who seem to be the only ones out and about so needing to wear shoes, gathering en masse to shout down Dictator Dan and his erosion of your human rights. Have I cracked onto something here? Ooh, this might be worth investigating. Accent Group reported a 52.8 million net profit after tax, up 57% on pre-pandemic levels. Although Chairman David Gordon said, "It remains our position that no JobKeeper funds have or will be used in the calculation or payments of management bonuses and dividends." Ooh, such a treasure. This is very odd because Shadow Assistant Minister for the Treasury, Andrew Lee, who has been a fierce advocate for the repayment of JobKeeper, criticised Accent's decision, saying the business should repay the subsidy in light of the $1.3 million bonuses given to Chief Executive Daniel Agostinelli last year. I'm not going to go back and re-record his name. He doesn't deserve it. A company that makes more sense to me that they'd be making bank. Have a look here. Who do we have? Shipping Group Cube Holdings will give back $17 million in JobKeeper subsidies. How did they end up on the horrible world of hypocrisy ride? Well, let me tell you. Strap in, because it's going to make you vomit more than the Scooby-Doo ride. For starters, Cube Holdings paid out the largest executive dividends of any company that received JobKeeper subsidy, some $2.78 million, right? Now, Michael West Media says that there is little evidence Cube was even eligible for JobKeeper, and as a revenue drop of more than 50% was required to be eligible. However, at the end of June 2020, Cube reported its underlying revenue had increased 9% over the same period in 2019. Say what? I couldn't even get JobKeeper as a sole trader because one of my jobs had already applied for me, and despite me not being at that job anymore, I wasn't allowed because I was already in the system, and they can't possibly be expected to do the job of setting up some paperwork twice. That wouldn't leave them any time to refuse to discuss how Cube qualified for JobKeeper, and that is an extremely important job. Although there is a whole shipping container of tea being spilled by numerous union officers reporting to Michael West Media that during a bargaining meeting held in Sydney last year, that there were threats to shut down 7 Australian ports if Cube wasn't awarded the JobKeeper subsidy. If only I had that kind of threatening power. Threats that Scott Morrison publicly condemned at the start of the pandemic. At the time, saying he wouldn't rule out the military intervention to settle the militant and extortionate dispute, claiming falsely that 40 ships were lined up outside Port Botany. Morrison, mate, this isn't the Suez Canal. Where are you getting these numbers from? Then turning to his tired and true, successful negotiating technique, threatening to shoot or blow somebody up if they don't listen to him, like a good Christian, like Jesus would have done. Despite posting $940 million in revenue in their financial year 21 first half-yearly earnings report, Cube is now trying to force 595 wharfies to pay back a portion of their JobKeeper subsidy through unpaid hours if the worker, for whatever reason, did not work their full hours whilst receiving the subsidy. Those reasons include the seasonal nature of wharf work, even in non-pandemic times. Oh, and the pandemic! Some pretty good reasons for maybe not being able to do your full complement of hours. Cube management argues that its wharfies were given a JobKeeper payment for 80 hours of work in a 28-day period. It remains to be seen how much repayment Cube is seeking, the result of which could allow them to claw back the $17 million in JobKeeper payments that they have just returned to the government. Oh! Ding 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 ding! Employee exploitation? That's our secret word for the day! We, of course, never say the secret word out loud. That's what makes it a secret. But whenever it is alluded to through rat fuckery and sneaky backchannel behaviour, it still triggers the word of the day alarm. And a story of workplace fuckery within Australia wouldn't be complete without checking in on everyone's old favourite man to hate, Gerry Harvey. What's going on, Gerry? What have you been up to? Seems Harvey Norman has refused to hand back more than $13 million in JobKeeper subsidies, despite funneling hundreds of millions of dollars into investors in the past year, as their profits have soared. The electronics and furniture retailer boosted after-tax profits by 116.3% to $462 million. Certainly sounds like a struggling business that wouldn't have survived, and I can't say this legally, but I know it in my heart, definitely exploited its workers to shit when the government was footing the bill. You better believe that they were working some crazy hours. Now Gerry Harvey is refusing to repay taxpayers despite reaping a whopping $78 million personal payday.
Can you Photoshop your life with better decisions, Gerry?
Okay.
Gerry has insisted that the government will receive the money back in tax, even though that is a separate legal requirement for all companies, irrespective of whether they took JobKeeper. And that's just wrong, Gerry, which is assuming that you're even paying all the taxes that you're supposed to. Are you, Gerry? Are you paying your taxes? Because the ABC says that you had $410 million taxable dollars on a $1.47 billion profit in 2018. And this equation, like my calculator that lost the plus button, doesn't add up. The New Daily has compiled a list of companies that have failed to repay their job company debts. Let's take a look at that, shall we? Whoa, what a list! Only 5 companies have actually paid that money back. Who? Who are these kings among companies? Well, let's have a look here. The only companies to have paid back their JobKeeper fully are Toyota, Iluka Resources, Santos, CMIC, and Abri. Look, maybe Toyota is still trying to dig itself out of the whole preferred vehicle of ISIS thing, and that's why they paid back their JobKeeper. But hey, we'll take it, you know. Give that JobKeeper back, please. Whereas groups that have only paid back some of their JobKeeper, the Super Retail Group, Nick Scali, Cochlear, Collins Foods, Blackmores, Adair's, Cube, Helios, Ingenia, Nine, Universal Saw, Liners, Rare Earth, Dusk. And these companies in particular, these next 2 companies, which undoubtedly would have done gangbusters in a period of people not leaving their house and job loss. Domino's and Seek. I spent a good amount of time looking for new jobs while being forced to job seek during a pandemic from a house that I wasn't legally allowed to leave except to go for an hour's worth of run in an attempt to run off the Leaning Tower of Pisa worth of pizza that I ingested during lockdown. But never fear! The first conviction for JobKeeper fraud is here! Who is the lucky recipient of all this ATO attention? Let's have a look-see. Oh, of course. A Melbourne man has been found guilty of falsely claiming he was a sole trader in order to receive the coronavirus wage subsidy. Can't say that I'm surprised there. I mean, I'm not mad, I'm just somewhat impressed. I'm a sole trader and I wasn't allowed to get any money for being a sole trader. Every time we locked down, I need to be registered for GST in order to be able to access the grants that were given to cover wages lost during lockdown. So I have gotten next to nothing that wasn't job seeker. I should give this guy a consulting fee and get him to convince the ATO that I'm a business. I might be running at a loss, but I'm still operating. This man was fined $3,000 and ordered to pay $3,000 in compensation and $282 in costs for 3 counts of making a false and misleading statement to the ATO. Now, this guy lodged 2 JobKeeper applications that claimed he was a sole trader who experienced a downturn of at least 30% turnover in May and June. However, the Magistrates Court found he was not operating a genuine business and had full-time equivalent employment. I mean, that term, genuine business, is an interesting one. My assessment of what makes a genuine business is definitely one that exists, but there is more. Genuine businesses shouldn't steal wages from their staff. They shouldn't steal revenue, which will build life-saving hospitals from the country, making employees piss in bottles to meet unreasonable quotas, or try to gaslight you from getting workplace compensation, denying you access to a union, thinking that pizza will solve all your workplace concerns, making you wear a shitty uniform because it's fun, or instead of giving you any sort of real assistance, instead form a circle and try taking bets when a customer starts yelling at you and chanting, "Fight, fight, 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 fight!" But that's just me and my experience with business. ATO Deputy Commissioner Will Day supported the conviction, saying the tax office has an important role to ensure JobKeeper payments were paid out in line with the scheme's intended purpose and were not exploited by members of the community. I'm just going to let that statement hang in the air for a moment while this image of Jerry Harvey bounces around the screen like a screensaver on a DVD player. For young listeners, a DVD is what made lonely people watch hours and hours of audio commentary to learn more about their favourite movies so they could entertain their friends at inappropriate moments with trivia that now both of us have to carry in our heads for the rest of our lives. Oh, took 5 days to shoot that scene, did it? It's a lot of days. More than I would have thought. What are we going to do now? But don't stress. Like everything else, from tax underpayments, the country's growing debt, recycling concerns, and climate change, we can take the onus off making things right from the large companies who love us and our planet, as you can tell by the expensive millions of dollars that they spend on media campaigns to tell us that they are good boys and girls, and that I, for one, am inclined to believe them, and we will proceed to place the full responsibility on individuals who didn't have the foresight to make millions of dollars from cost-cutting initiatives in the pockets of their staff in order to prepare a media defense to make the public understand that they couldn't possibly create as much impact as a business if they lived to be 200, or bothering to create a 4-minute shower song playlist. Yeah, that's going to save us all. That'll definitely save the planet. Oh, look at these songs, aren't they good? And that way people can feel the real weight of their decision to shower longer today because they spent the entire day elbow deep in compost and rubbish trying to make sure all of their recycling and garbage is sorted correctly on their day off. So you've earned more than 4 minutes, damn it. You're going to take that shower, no matter what the song list says.